What's going on, workforce? Brian and Chris here, and today we're kind of giving a summary of what I've experienced so far before I dive into a stream on which that I continue going past higher. Just to give everybody who has not experienced the Endwalker story a heads up, this is going to be a spoiler talk. We've been kind of doing these like in parts, kind of at certain milestones, and obviously the holidays have kind of thrown our schedule a little off. So this is us getting back into it, sitting down. I told Chris where I've been, but to catch everybody up so far, the higher achievement has just been unlocked, so I'm looking forward to taking on that next step. For those of you who are sticking around for this video, that is obviously the scene with the child and their parents and that whole apocalypse of Thavnir and that whole situation. So obviously we're getting to see all these pieces pick up and move, going right from having defeated Zodiark and then essentially learning about more what the moon and the Lapritz are for. Like there was so much, like it was like, oh, okay, so this was a prison, but it was also plan B, and we're going to get everybody off we're going to get as many people off the planet as we can, which we learned the true name of the planet. And I can't even, like, it's been a couple, sleeps since I remember it, like, but we've been calling it Heidel this whole time. And that's absolutely not the case. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, talk about like glass shattering moment for like somebody who's been playing this game and calling it Heidel for the last 11 years. I was just like, oh, wow. And so their plan is to get us off planet because essentially the final days have started. The aether currents have been corrupted or ceasing or whatever. Essentially Zodiark, his existence, continue to maintain that. And now when people despair, when they lose hope, they turn into beasts with no aether. In my mind, that kind of takes me to the empty. I'm like, when we talk about like kind of callbacks to like past Final Fantasy games. And that's, I mean, not just tragic, because it's not like their life returns to the life force, the life stream. Like they're gone, like they're just like literally just obliterated out of all existence known to it. And so obviously this is that theory of Akasha, the theory of emotion, and that whole piece. And so we've seen that happen. We've seen the placement czar, the satrap, the guy who was speaking on his behalf, sacrifice, get destroyed, get killed, and then obviously Vitra stepping in and finally revealing themselves as the satrap, which I thought was a great scene, especially with the baby. Like when it all comes back down to the baby, and the fact that Vitra like immediately like calmed the baby from that emotional, and the fact that can actually like the team, and when he saw Gratia like help that guy, help him from not despairing, and then step up and go full on like Crystal Exarch mode in that scene, I thought he was gonna die. Like I was like, oh god, no, like don't let this be Grahatia's like final moment. But I thought that was such a beautiful moment. I was, as a parent, distraught through that. Like every time they were talking about like we got to find these parents and their baby, I'm like, gosh, oh, will they go that far? Will Yoshi P go that far? Like, because we just like left the suicide scene pretty much. It feels like just like right before that, and now we're sitting here. I'm like, and as a parent, I'm like, I had to take a break immediately after. If you react to that stream, or if you go look at that clip of just at the end of it, like it's like I finished it and it was like it was just too intense. So I've talked for like 4 minutes. What's going on, my friend?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's dense. I mean, honestly, that's why when we talk about Zodiark, like that's chapter 1, right? That's a full expansion prior to Endwalker level of pacing.
Mm-hmm.
This to this point that's a lot. You've done a lot very, very rapidly.
Yeah, it's just like revelation, and it picks up speed. And then essentially it's been really good to have chat saying, hey Brian, like if you need to take a break, like this would be a really good pause, like this would be a good point to kind of pause and then come back later, which it's been helpful, because I was like, oh man, I don't want to like because like I never know if I'm gonna get like 4 hours or 1 hour. So it's like, okay, it's been 4 hours, like I definitely know that it's putting that upper limit on
it's why I told you asked me at the last step to tell me where to tell you to break.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if he goes into the holidays, I would rather him go into the holidays being aware that he's killed Zodiark than that he had to save a baby whose parents just died.
Yeah.
Like, given the choice of which way to
choice.
experience the holidays, one of these is not like the other.
No.
So, like, it's very dark.
The when we talk
it also
about
made it really hard for, like, just as an interesting side note, it made it really hard for the zone to really function as normal. So I did the last of my Aether currents
Mhm.
while Fafnir was on fire.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, the writing seems weird when they're like, we got to do this stuff, Brian. Like, I got to go get the mail. If I miss the mail one more time, and you're like, and like there's meteors raining down, and you're like, really? And they're like, yeah. Can you help me return this library book?
He's
It is like
delusional.
5 days late.
They're delusional. They're
And
delusional.
so, like, a normal quest, right? Like, a normal quest, like, hey, these beavers have been eating my carrots. And you're like, oh, that's weird. Well, let's go find out what's going on with these beavers. And there's like meteors raining down.
I
You're
have to save them from these
maybe-
beavers because otherwise they'll despair and turn into a hideous
it's
beast.
fine.
A blasphemy.
And so, like, doing the Aether currents as you went, I think, was a different experience for people that did that than doing the Aether currents during the final days. I did get a good laugh out of, like, just some weird contextual, like, oh, that's different than if I'd done that 2 hours ago.
Yeah.
Also made it really hard to do spoiler free streams during that entire section because, like, I can't do anything. Like, you lose, like, the zones are different.
Mhm.
We've now, like, I don't think Shadowbringers felt this different. The zone
zones
is
went
different.
from
That there is
not a
different.
day to like always day to like having a day-night cycle. So it wasn't like, and chat was like, hey, turn on your mini map, because like if you guys are following me or haven't seen any of my talks about it, I actually been turning off mini maps in Final Fantasy 14 and the other games that I'm playing where absolute possible. And so, like, I turned on my mini map and it's like, oh, what's the weather? Like apocalypse. Like that's the weather mode for that zone. I thought that was really cool, and then I turned that off. So I thought that was kind of fun to have and see chat.
I think
kind
it's why it was always day at the media tour. Is I think they were struggling with how to get us in without having cleared story, and I think they were worried that Thabnar would apocalypse.
just like, it's a nice sunny day, and then somebody's over there having a bad day and despairs. And
It
then
was a dev build, and
Yeah.
Fusion noted it on Aetherite Radio is pre-story, pre-going in Endwalker, and he goes, "We've seen a screenshot of what
Of the
looked like
zone on fire."
Thabnar on fire, and I asked about the weather, and they said it's always going to be noon and sunny." And he's like, "I wonder if they were having trouble it not being on fire."
Yeah.
And now you're like, "No, that's very valid. Like,
Yeah.
they were letting us go to all over the zone with flying unlocked. What if, like, you know, the day before they let us in, it was on fire? Like, I don't know, just shut off the weather. Like, I don't know.
Turn off the weather.
Just fix it. Like we'll have it fixed for when the game goes live, that it won't just accidentally go on fire. But, like, you know, we're on an early build, and so I do wonder, like, what the coincidence of that is, when he noted that, like, the weather doesn't seem to change as much in Thabnar as it did in, like, Sherlan, where it was raining when he was there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
It's interesting. I think I appreciate the lightning is really weird because it's like this like red flash from the apocalypse that is happening.
Did you do the dungeon there?
Mhm. Oh yeah, the dungeon is phenomenal. Like, I really enjoyed how that was structured, and that's obviously where you get to the cutscene where Y'shtola was like, I can't see anything here. Like, there's no Aether here. There's nothing that is, you know, I don't even know how these people are being formed, and in that regards, because they just get like completely, like, in my mind, just inverted. You know.
So there's some stuff going on with dungeons that I find really interesting as of you've done 3 of them now.
Mhm. Yeah.
So as you go down to the Thabnar dungeon, the first boss of the Thabnar dungeon is an open world mob that you fight in that scenario leading to the dungeon.
Mhm.
So you get an early look at the mechanics that get scaled up. It's also interesting that the Thabnar dungeon last boss has mechanics that you needed in Zodiark. And so, like, we're starting to see trial and raid mechanics make their way into dungeons. Now, there's a weird order there that it was in Zodiark first and then was brought into the Thabnar dungeon. But like one of my complaints about the dungeon system, and like what I do wish that they felt harder, but one of my complaints about the dungeon system is that this is just the general concept that people are like, well, people should just play better. And I'm like, how are they supposed to learn this? Right.
Right.
Like here in the real world, we're like, well, kids should know how to take better care of themselves. But then we like make school mandatory, and it has PE mandatory, and like school lunches are a thing that is like provided in some parts of the country. And like there's all these things, right? That, and it's like, oh, so it is reasonable to expect that even if their parents don't know how to teach them, that they are being exposed to the lessons necessary to have like some basic sets of skills and knowledge.
Yeah.
But when you jump into Final Fantasy, that's not true. So everybody's like, well, they should just know how to heal because I find it easy. But like the game doesn't do a great job of like covering the gap for anybody who doesn't find it easy.
Well,
and like these dungeons are better than, I think, in my opinion, the Shadowbringer ones at using trial and raid mechanics in the dungeon.
Well, and I think obviously when you look at it in terms of why, would be the level in my mind is like it's an 85 dungeon. Like at 85, and to your point and to the principle is that often, and I know I'm going to count myself more in this, is that I don't need to make a change until I hit some kind of resistance. Right. Mm-hmm. So if essentially, and this is kind of where like it comes down to more game theory than anything else, is that you want to make sure that a game isn't 100% winnable, because otherwise you're going to quit. But if you can't win at all, then you're going to quit. And it's like the game, the ideal game theory is that you're going to win roughly 60 to 70% of the time in that regards. And it's when you hit that resistance that all of a sudden it forces you to go, hey. Now what we saw in past expansions, to your point, is that when Stormblood, we felt any resistance until we got to the final trial. And that's where like even articles were written about it going like, hey, here's this nice even hill. And then all of a sudden there was this spike at the final trial. And a lot of people struggled. Eventually Gear made that a non-issue. Eventually Gear, and then enough, people learn the mechanics. But essentially we're like, to your point, where I think they're doing a much better job is that I feel like it's stepping up at a reasonable pace. And it's giving you obviously plenty of times where like in the Mario kind of game design world, that it's like, yeah, we've taught you how to jump on the Goomba. We've taught you how to do these things. And now we're going to start bringing those in, mixing those and matching those. And they've done that to a degree in the past, but I think they're definitely knocking it out of the park here. But where they did in the past is that raids from previous expansions were in the Shadowbringers dungeons. So we saw some mechanics in the Shadowbringers dungeons that were actually a part of like Savage raids from the previous expansion. So only if you've done those, but they were tuned down to a lesser degree. So you weren't end up, like, hey, wow, that was a dungeon.
As opposed to the Tank Buster marker means Tank Buster in a lot of these dungeons, at least as we're geared right now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Maybe the gear really wears off, but I feel like these are tuned a little better than Shadowbringers, and I feel like they are paced a little better than Stormblood, and that's a pretty good set. So, and thematically they're amazing. Narratively they're amazing. So we didn't have to give anything up to make them better gameplay.
Yeah.
I still think they could go further, but I did want to note that like those first 3 dungeons, I thought came out of the gate really swinging well.
Yeah, and that's where it's
like
if the dungeons continue on this trajectory, like it's, to me, like the only critique that I'm gonna have is the same critique I've had every expansion. I'm gonna wish that there was a hard mode or a level 90 version
dungeons.
Right, like a version of that. In fact, actually, one of the things like that we're seeing, which was, you and I've called this because it's the same cycle. Some ex-WoW player was like, this, like, what do you mean I only have 2 dungeons after I finished the game? And this is like, man, WoW had so much better, like so much more content, more fights, etc. It's like, yeah, Yoshi P said multiple times that he's wished that he had the budget of WoW, like, and
anybody that tries to defend that, Yoshi P also agrees with that sentiment.
He agrees.
Yeah, we would love to do more.
We would love to, yeah. And even to the fact that like we've had like such a huge surge of population, tying that into Yoshi P going, and when Asmongold asks like, how has this impacted y'all's plans? It hasn't, because they get set and then they get executed. So like I would expect that from a budget, when Yoshi P says we're sparing no expense, it's like that in my mind is a 12 to 18th month where we're going to start to actually see the real impact of the player base and its increase in population. But it's just like, yeah, like I think everybody agrees, and we would definitely want something like that, but we want to make sure that when it gets implemented, it doesn't become like a second job. Like, I think that's the balance he's trying to find, especially if they are looking at doing something like that, which he's kind of hinted at. And in their regards,
the counterpoint with WoW is anybody who doesn't like Mythic Plus but does like something like raiding really didn't like how obligatory a little bit of that could be. And a little bit of a couple things in WoW being obligatory felt like a lot of things were obligatory. It started to feel like a pretty big shopping list that you had to do every single week.
And if you miss the train, then you're just kind of fatigued in that regards. And so there's like Final Fantasy 14 has a, like, as I think the majority of the player base would love, you know, especially when it comes down to the dungeons and how good they are. Like, when I get to cap, I would be like, man, it'd be cool to have a level 90 version of this dungeon, just to have a little bit more variety in that quote unquote roulette. But we'll get there maybe someday. I don't know. But you're like the trajectory of the dungeons has been on point so far. The boss fights have been on point so far. I haven't gotten to that like high grind yet, because you and I are still like, you're ahead of me. You finished the story. I'm making my way through on Reaper. So like, I haven't got into that full on like, okay, I'm grinding 81. Now I'm grinding 83. Now I'm grinding 85. So I don't know, like at the end, like he asked me in a couple months if it's like, how are those dungeons? It's like, whew.
So they patched the dungeons
for more experience,
a lot more experience. And I will tell you, before they felt fine. Yeah. But like, also, if instead you like Fates, go do Fates. Like if instead you like it felt really lateral. Like yeah, there's probably an optimal one, but they're all fine. They feel good now.
Yeah.
Where like if you like dungeons at all, like Brian, if you're like, dude, I just did Vanispati and I want to do it again when I start off stream today, I'm in. Like wholeheartedly, because like it is outrageously well rewarded as far as experience go. It is like getting a roulette bonus every single time.
That's amazing. Imagine tapping that into a roulette bonus. You're like bada bada, and then you get the challenge logs. You're like, how did I just gain 2 levels? I don't know.
It ends up being like 2 to 2.5 runs per level. So so you're back down to that like four of each dungeon gets you all the way to cap, which is a really healthy place to be, as opposed to like 10. And you're like, I don't want to run the dungeon 10 times.
And Chili says in chat that also hunts the 3 million XP a day. Like, I love the hunts. Hunt system is something that I'm always taking a part in, especially when you start doing any job that has a queue. Because hunts outside of Fates, like when we talk about like 2 different pieces of content, like hunts are awesome. Fates stress me out, because I know when I do a hunt, I come back and my progress is saved exactly where I was, and I just move on to the next whatever. For a Fate, it's like, oh god, I hope I can complete this Fate before the thing pops off. And then it's like, oh no, we're mid-fight, and then I have to take this dungeon. Oh my gosh, that's where it's like the Zador Bosha stuff Fate like thing was so good, because I was like, yeah, let me go and I'll do this.
That's a difference in our rewarding.
It's different.
Because like for me, I like the battle content, and so like getting sucked out of a Fate is like, yeah, it's a bummer, but like I play this game to battle. So I really struggle when there's like 30 minutes of cutscenes and I haven't pushed a single hotkey. And so like, even no matter how good the story is, I struggle with that. And so like the fun thing about Fates is at least like, oh, I got to play Final Fantasy, because in my mind, playing Final Fantasy is the battle content. Like that's the core mechanic of the game. And everything else is something that facilitates that. What justifies the amount of combat? Oh, a good story. What makes the combat worth it? Oh, experience and gear. And so like everything else, in my opinion, like the combat system.
Yeah, your gameplay first.
Key thing.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with being like, so if I get to do 2 Fates and I get sucked into a dungeon on the 3rd, it's like, well,
okay. I'm just saying, like, yeah, it doesn't stop me from doing Fates. It doesn't stop me from doing Fates, but it is something I'm keenly aware of. Right. So that where it's like, oh, especially if it's like under 5 minutes, like if it ever's under 5 minutes, it becomes a hunts are the priority, maybe a Fate. And then it's like, okay.
Do you want to know what makes that more stressful if you just want to add another little anxiety?
Yeah, why not?
If you're in a Fate by yourself and you die and you want to go finish that Fate and you release back to Charlan and you port back over, you are not guaranteed the same instance.
Oh, wow,
the Fate is gone. There is a partial Fate, not for you. And you would have to know which instance you were in to go back to it.
Note to self, never play alone.
It's just like a tiny little like slap you upside the head.
As a final
where did it go?
As a final thought, did you like that meme I sent you about Warrior, the ultimate healer?
Yes, yes. I don't know if you've watched my clip, but it's from a dungeon.
I listened to it
that you
just
haven't done.
to again, like as a part of my
Yeah.
relationship with the internet right now.
But I took the boss down with a Reaper from like 38%, and the comments have been like, "Oh, I did this by myself from 70%." Like I'm not alone. Like,
do you want a little bit of me to give you a little bit of anxiety or a little bit of pressure on something?
sure.
So, the thing that we've wanted in Final Fantasy 14 for a long time? I need you to level up in New World, get to cap by probably February, because it's coming in New World. So
Okay.
I'm really excited about it. It's a week. It sounds like it's a weekly rotator. So it's like every week, one of the dungeons, and the dungeons. If you haven't done them, like we got to get you through them, dude, because they're good.
You're at Captain Guild Wars, right? 'Cause we got an expansion coming down.
I'm Captain Guild Wars, yes. So I'm ready for End of Dragons. And then I'm now no longer Captain PSO2, and they just had their winter update, and it looks like they're making some big changes there. So I'm really looking forward to that. And so I'm gonna get ready for that. I'll figure out where to slot that in. Like right now, so lots of games, it's gonna be 2022 is gonna be a fun time if you like grinding experience.
We're having fun. Yes, it's gonna be a great time. I had a wonderful holiday. I hope you did as well. I got to teach my my nephew Pokemon.
Nice.
We got through the third trainer he's playing Pearl, I'm playing Diamond. We're playing alongside each other, and we trade when we get to the cities. He gives me Pokemon that he's like, I'm just gonna go catch something I don't want to give you. So the trades are very fair. And he just hands me junk while he gets to pick from my box. But we're having a great time, and so that is what I spent my holiday doing.
That sounds like a good time. That sounds like a really good time. Maddie and I've been playing.
Yeah, it was really evangelical because my in-laws aren't big gamers, and my nephew's at a stage where he's having to learn to read, and like that's a lot of skill to take on, right? All of an English language, and the amount of reading in a JRPG, the amount of reading in an RPG is substantial. And so he's reading aloud all of the text for Pokemon, and there's just, they don't hold back. Like there's a lot of like 2 and 3 syllable words that are like he's never heard. So not to mention made up words just to throw him off. So he's like, how do I say that one? I was like, well, I've never seen it before, but sure, let's figure it out. So they were also like super like, yeah, oh my gosh, Pokemon's great. He should play a little Pokemon every week. I was like, he should play a little games every week.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. That's like Final Fantasy was what like did that for me. 100%. Like just in here, just reading and struggling and reading and struggling, and so eventually
we're
just
play
like,
online.
Yeah.
Like, how do we play online? I was like, you know where I can get you a YouTube video for that. Get you some parent settings.
There you go. That's how you do it. Guys, thanks so much for kind of listening to this kind of catch up. Chris is gonna be live over on Twitch. Go hang out with him if you want full spoilers. Like kind of conversation and discussion, and welcome to everybody who's already over here. I'm going to be playing today, and then tonight I'm taking Julie to see Spider-Man. So we're gonna go, like continue this kind of holiday. I took the kids and the whole family to Six Flags yesterday, minus the littles. So it was, 3 and up, and it was so fun. It was such a treat to see the kids and actually like see them kind of be nervous about roller coasters, but then essentially like, okay, can we go again? Can we go again, Dad? Yeah, let's go again. But it was a good time all around. So hopefully you guys are having a good holiday. Thanks for listening to our catch up conversation, and we will see you guys in our next video. But until then,
take care.